Welcome back to Firestorm Games, and in this video we'll be continuing our look into the new Ossiarch Bone Reapers by building the Strategist Supreme known as Katakros, Mortarch of the Necropolis. So let's kick things off by first talking about how Katakros works on the battlefield, as this will help to explain some of the design choices in this model. So first of all, Katakros can most simply be summed up as a general and command unit all wrapped up into a single base. He comes surrounded by 4 other models who act as his bodyguards and his advisors. Whilst each of these models do not feature their own stat line, their weapons are individually listed on Katakros' profiles. On the face of it, it seems fairly standard as many units have different weapons for mounts and riders. However, what makes Katakros different is how losing wounds affects him. Most behemoths in Age of Sigmar become steadily less effective as they take wounds, but Katakros instead loses members of the cohort and their associated special rules and weapons instead. This represents them getting picked off during the fighting or sacrificing themselves to protect their lord. But instead of just getting weaker, Katakros actually begins to change his role. The more wounds he loses, the more attacks he gains with his glaive, Indakat, which continues to build until his entire retinue is lost, at which point he then gains the use of his shield and Mortis, giving him 4 additional attacks, plus the ability to generate mortal wounds on a 6 to hit. This means that at the start of the battle, Katakros will be used to buff and support his other units. However, once his helpers and their abilities are lost, he adopts a much more deadly offensive role and will be dishing out wounds with his high-rending, high-damage attacks. So, how is all this reflected in the model itself? Well, first of all, we have the 4 advisors. First of all, we have the Gnosis Scrollbearer, a rather inoffensive fellow whose job it is to write up binding contracts that cause enemy units to find your own units harder to hit. The Scrollbearer is the first model to be lost, but following him we have the Prime Necrophorus, who holds aloft the Katakros' banner, doubling the range of one of his command abilities, whilst also bringing along a 2-handed Greatblade. Next on the list is the Aviarch Spymaster. This guy carries several undead pigeons in a cage and wears a distinctly avian mask. Using his bottle of ink and pen, he is able to write messages that direct a spy network to disrupt your opponent's generation of command points. Finally, we have the Legion Mortis, who, whilst not offering any direct boost to Katakros' abilities, does provide 6 solid attacks that have the ability to double hits on the roll of a 6. The Legion Mortis is by far my favourite of the cohort. His segmented armour and helmet really give off some cool undead samurai vibes. So now that we've picked our way through the retinue, we have Katakros himself. This miniature just oozes authority. He's perched on top of a ruined platform in a somewhat relaxed position. His head is positioned to appear as though he's carefully observing his forces and the battle going on around him, ready to take advantage as soon as the opportunity arises. He is armed with a huge shield and Mortis, which follows the same segmented design as other Bone Reaper units, and with the addition of extra gemstone adornments. In his other hand, he carries the equally oversized glaive known as Indakat, whose long-wrapped handle holds a deadly curved blade, inset with more gems and inscriptions. The rest of Katakros follows a similar bone construct style as the rest of his Bone Reapers, but his body is much more human-like in its formation and bears more than a passing resemblance to the engineers from the Alien franchise. So when building this model, I wanted a way of representing his rules, so decided to magnetize the 4 models in his retinue. This was a pretty straightforward process that involved using various sizes of neodymium magnets, drilling holes into each of the assistants' feet, and supergluing the magnet in place. This was then repeated just beneath where their feet were positioned. The result was that I could remove the members of Katakros' retinue as he lost wounds, giving me a more literal way of tracking roughly just how many wounds he was down at a quick glance. And here we have the finished Katakros kit. Overall, it was a surprisingly simple kit to build considering the size of the model. Now that the model is fully assembled, you can also see how integrated ruined platform really helps to give some importance to Katakros, as he stands much higher than the other units in your force. If you're looking to pick up Katakros for yourself, you'll be able to save yourself a little money by getting at least 10% off that RRP by checking out the Firestorm Games webstore, which you can find a link to in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave your comments and subscribe to be kept up to date with all of our future videos. And so, we should say a big thank you for watching this video, and we hope to see you again on Firestorm Games.